Hello, everybody. Welcome in to Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews. I'm Brandon Adams. Happy to have the entire Dog Nation team and our buddy Dari Payro from RS Andrews with us today. And we should let you know that we're recording this earlier than you see it. We record RS Andrews during the middle of the week, and obviously it airs in the Dog Nation video channels on Fridays. And so when you look around today, you see Jeff Sintel. He's got his old school Braves hat on. Dari Payro's dressed fully in the Braves gear. So as we're recording this, we're still basking in the glow of the Braves World Series win. Of course, when you see this show on Friday, it's also parade day. So certainly no expiration date on the happiness for Braves fans right now. And I guess, Dari, I'll start right there. It feels good to be picking some games again, but doing so in the home of the world champion Braves, that feels really good there too, doesn't it?
Oh, no doubt. It's been a long time coming for the city of Atlanta, for any of the major sports. So happy for the Braves. They got it done. I was able to go over the weekend to watch them, and for them to win it and close it out is just phenomenal.
What was that atmosphere in the ballpark like? I wasn't lucky enough to be there for any of those games. I was really working almost the entire time, but just missed out on that chance. But I heard the vibe was just incredible.
It was. I mean, I was there Sunday, so the first inning was euphoric.
Oh, yeah.
And
unfortunately didn't end that way, but yeah, it started off that way.
Yeah, it ended up being like a slow death by 1,000 cuts, as they just gave up almost a run or two runs like every inning. But before the game, during that, at least that first couple innings was just phenomenal. And I have a lot of friends that went over the weekend that just said it was so electric. So love it.
That's certainly great to hear. And obviously electric. A lot of Braves fans in Houston on Tuesday night when this thing got wrapped up. So that was a cool thing to be able to see. Of course, our topic here on this show, though, picking games, we'll try to make you some money the upcoming weekend. For the most part, this show has been doing that. So before we get into the slate here for this week, let's also take a moment to update you on our season-long standings. I got to tell you, there's a couple things that are pretty interesting to me on this. First of all, the fact that Connor Riley, one of our Dog Nation panelists, and Dari Payro, they cannot get out of the flat-footed tie they have been in, tied on the season. And Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 consecutive weeks, both for the good and the bad, you and Dari have posted the exact same record. Do I have that correct? It's 3 weeks in a row of precisely the same record?
It's definitely at least 2 weeks in a row. And we may have been tied for 3 weeks in a row now. But it's, Dari and I matched up on 5 picks last week. I think we only got one right, and that was Georgia. And then he smartly took Auburn. I smartly took Mississippi State. And that was, even Steven at the end of the day, we both go 2-5 last week. We both got to do better. At least I know I have to do better. 2-5 is not what we want to do. So we're looking to get back and get back on a positive note this week.
Yeah, listen, still making it to the pay window on the season overall, though. 41-32. No apologies needed for that. That's profitable in any book. Me just right behind that, winning week a week ago, 40-33 on the year. Mike Griffith just below 500 for the week, just above 500 in the season, 3-4, and then 37-36 on the campaign. Jeff Sintel 2-5 a week ago, now 35-38 on the year. So listen, when your basement guy is almost at 500 and everybody else is above 500 in the season, that's a pretty good opportunity for the folks who are paying close attention to make some money there on that. So we'll see if we can keep that going here with another week. The way that our game works is this. We'll give you the point spreads for the games that matter. No top 25 matchup outside the SEC here this week. So it's the top SEC games of the week that we'll focus on here. We'll ask each of our Dog Nation panelists to make their pick against the spread, and that'll form a consensus. Then after that, we'll ask Dari Payro if he wants to join that consensus, or if we say, as we say around here, if he wants to go with the flow. And we'll invite you to do the same thing as you make your picks alongside with us on the show Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews each and every week. And of course, another reason why we call the show Go with the Flow is because RS Andrews is really good about making the things in your house flow the way they're supposed to. The water through the pipes in your plumbing, the electricity through all the stuff that whatever electricity flows its way through. I don't know anything about that, but thankfully RS Andrews does. Or the air coming out of your vents, all those things RS Andrews really, really good at. Then get your heating system tuned up before the winter gets here. They can handle you for those plumbing, electrical issues. Your water heater goes out. In many cases, RS Andrews can replace it for you the same day. You need to find them online, though, rsandrews.com for more on that. So with that said, let's get ready to make our picks here for the weekend. Let's start where we always do. Georgia, fresh off a cocktail party win against the Florida Gators, 34-7. Now come back home take on the Missouri Tigers. Missouri did win last week straight up against Vanderbilt, and that was not a given for a while in that football game. But continuing a streak that Dari Payro from RS Andrews actually told us about last week. The Tigers have yet to cover the spread thus far this season, and they are failing to cover by an average of more than 10 points per game. So it has been a disastrous year for Eli Drinkwitz charges, and they come in to Georgia reeling here a bit. 38-point dog. Also some questions about the health of starting quarterback Connor Basilick. So this is a mess all the way around for Missouri against the number one team in the country in this week's inaugural first college football playoff ranking. So Mike Griffith, will turn to you. A gigantic number for Georgia, minus 38 against Missouri. How do you think this one plays out?
Yeah, it's a huge number. Both teams with quarterback questions. I think Georgia will probably play to some degree JT Daniels. I don't know whether he starts or he comes in, but when he comes in, it's not going to be to hand off the ball, or else he would have done that against Florida. So you mentioned all that background on Missouri B. I don't really have much else to add other than I'm going to take Georgia to cover the spread.
So Mike Griffith takes Georgia minus the big number. Jeff Sintel, how about for you?
Yeah, so you've got, I think, the stats this week. The Vogue stat early midweek is that Missouri's averaging like 6.4 yards allowed per carry. They're giving up almost 300 yards per game on the ground, almost 2,300 rushing yards so far. Those are big numbers, which means that really big number there for Georgia, Missouri does not scare me one bit. Georgia's lines are starting to look like prime Tommy Frazier era Nebraska 1995 lines. Give me the dogs, lay the points. They're going to cover.
So a lot, boy, you just about just laying wood left and right. This panel is just laying wood all over the place with Georgia right now. Connor, you want to join that price tag?
I do. This Missouri team is last in the country in run defense. This is a team that I think if they played North Dakota State or an upper tier FCS team, I think they'd lose to them this week. Give me, with all the quarterback questions, with how porous the run defense is, with this Georgia team that's just going to want to go out there and beat the snot out of Missouri for 4 quarters, give me Georgia minus 38. This could be minus 50, and I think I'd still take it.
So Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, they agree. They always take Georgia minus the big number, 94% like the dogs. Obviously, there's no respect there for Missouri in the part of our audience. I just can't do it. And this is not a negative thing against Georgia. 38 points is too much for me. Now, there's a chance that I'm wrong, but I feel more comfortable going against Georgia minus such a huge price. So if I'm going to be wrong, let me be wrong on what I think is the more logical side. I think that Georgia would 40-3 or something along those lines. I don't think it's going to be a close game, but it's just a more sensible pick for me to play the 38 points as opposed to lay the 38 points. So from that standpoint, I'll be the contrarian here, Darian. I'll take Missouri plus the 38, but the flow is decidedly on the side of UGA. You want to go with the flow.
I'm going to go with the flow. Can't fault you for taking the points. It's a big number, but run, Georgia, run. That's what they're going to do. Mizzou, absolutely atrocious. Worst in college football against the run. Georgia's going to pound it. JT comes in there. He'll hand it. He'll throw it. I think the offense, you can tick it up a bit if he's there as far as scoring points because he's going to want to press the issue. I like it. I think Mizzou may score 10 points or something in the game too, but I think Georgia's good for 50+.
So if you're interested, Georgia's actually 1-2 against the spread in its last 3 times being favored by more than 30 points in SEC play. The fact of the matter is, even a great team like Georgia's not going to be favored by more than 30 a lot. So you got to go back a couple of years here to even find 3 instances of that. But, 2 instances of a failed cover, 1 instance of a cover. They are 1-1 in that spot here this season, winning 62-0 as 36-point favorites on the road against Vanderbilt earlier the year, but failing to cover the 31.5-point number in a 40-13 win against South Carolina earlier this season. So that's kind of where it stands with Georgia when favored by the really big number there in SEC play. With that, Yes, go ahead, Dari.
I mean, the other thing is Missouri still hasn't covered on the year.
That's right.
So big number, not worried about it.
So there you go. So a lot of wood being laid right there. And Dari says he's not worried about that at all. So we see that plays. That will also turn our attention back to Georgia, Missouri at the end of our show. Does a big point spread also mean a big total scored? We'll take a look at the over-under for Georgia, Missouri before we're done. Next game, not always do we pick SEC teams against I guess technically this is a Power 5 opponent, but it doesn't have the feel of a Power 5 necessarily. But when you have Hugh Freeze going back to his old stomping grounds there in Oxford, and when the number's not exactly huge, Well, I think that's probably a game worth picking. So Hugh Freeze will bring quarterback Malik Willis, who's certainly gotten some attention from Todd McShay, the ESPN draft analyst, and also gotten some attention there with the Flames over the course of the last couple of years. And they are 9.5-point underdogs coming into Ole Miss. Ole Miss reeling, of course, losing at Auburn a week ago, but they are favored against their old boss Freeze, who will return to the Grove and Vaught Hemingway Stadium on Saturday. So with that in mind, pretty fun game, Mike. Ole Miss minus 9.5. How do you think they perform against Malik Willis, Hugh Freeze, and the rest of the Flames?
Yeah, none of these players were under Freeze. I think he's last year was 2016. So I don't think it's as personal for the players as it will be for the fans. And to your point, I thought Ole Miss looked a little tired against Auburn in that game. I didn't think that was the best version of Ole Miss. You know, they've had some tough games against Arkansas and Tennessee that went down to the wire. I just don't know that I think Liberty has what it takes to play big-time football. They lost to Syracuse earlier this year, and they're on the road in a game that Ole Miss really needs to win. The way these teams score points, 9.5 doesn't seem like that much to me. So I'm going to take Ole Miss to cover.
All right, so Mike on the side of the Rebels, Jeff Sintel, the number's 9.5. What do you think of Freeze versus Kiffin?
Yeah, you got a pair of potential first-round draft pick quarterbacks in this game, maybe a little bit longer down the road for Matt Corral. Very exciting. I guess I'm gonna go with the scribe, the beat writer here on this one. I don't know if Liberty's really built to play with an Ole Miss team like this on the road. 9.5 isn't quite a lot. I mean, really, does the winner of this game, the biggest outcome for me is which one of these head coaches comes out of this game as the biggest offensive wizard, maestro, czar in college football. I think that's one thing I'm going to be watching to see which unit on offense performs better. But you still got to think Ole Miss has a few more horses on defense. I'm gonna lay the points, and I like Ole Miss to win this game and cover.
So 2 straight on the side of the Rebels here. Connor Riley, do you agree?
Do you guys know Ole Miss is going to be missing their top 3 receivers on Saturday? They are really banged up at wide receiver right now. And because of that, because I think there's a chance for a backdoor cover here, I'll take Liberty. I don't feel great about it, but if I can bet against DJ Durkin, I will gladly do so. So give me Liberty here, plus 9.5.
Connor, the honest truth is I didn't know that, nor have I heard much this week about the health of Matt Corral. Is he back healthy? Is that the expectation for Corral on Saturday?
Yeah, he's hurt but not injured.
So so there you go. You're dealing with a little bit of a bang up situation. The receivers and maybe Corral less than 100% there as well. And I just don't have a good feeling about this game one way or another. I mean, you know, on the one hand, I heard Mike and Jeff both say that they didn't feel like Liberty had the horses to stay with Ole Miss, but you know, they played okay the last couple of years at times. I don't really have a lot of trend data that makes me feel too good about this one way or another. I'm going to take a flyer here on Ole Miss. I don't have a lot on this game, to be completely honest. I think it's a fun game, but I don't have a lot on it. Daria, I'll go with Ole Miss here. That puts the flow on the side of Ole Miss. Our Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers also like Ole Miss there too. 64% on the side of the Rebels. So Connor, the contrarian on this one, everybody else on the side of Ole Miss, and Connor's injury reasons may be enough on that. You want to go with the flow and take the Rebels here?
I am. I wasn't aware of the wide receivers, how many are going to be out. I know they're kind of banged up there. That could be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. But Ole Miss, it's next man up. I mean, they got some talent there. So I think it'll be a good game. Liberty has a pretty good defense. But I just don't think they have as much offense as Ole Miss.
I think that's certainly very interesting. Should be a fun one to see. Obviously, the big marquee game in the SEC is where we'll turn our attention next. And I do think this is fun. And don't forget, also some potential implications for the SEC West race. If you want to fast forward to the Iron Bowl at the end of the year, if Auburn could pull that upset, the game we're talking about next could mean a whole lot more, with Auburn getting ready to take on Texas A&M. Of course, Auburn on the winning side against Ole Miss a week ago. And pay close attention to the reemergence of Bo Nix, the butt of jokes near the beginning of the season. But no one's laughing now after being pulled in the game against Georgia State and watching TJ Finley lead the comeback there that day against the Panthers. And after that, Bo Nix shook it off, had a big game against LSU, has been playing well ever since, including, I think you'd have to say, outplaying Ole Miss a week ago with what he did there at the quarterback position. Now he gets to go on the road at Texas A&M as a 4.5-point underdog, with the Aggies suddenly playing their best football of the season there as well. think this is a really good football game, to be completely honest with you. And the Aggies, as I said before, are favored by 4.5 points. Both these teams separated by just one spot in the college football playoff rankings there as well this past weekend. Or I should say this past week. So, Mike Griffith, the decision is yours for A&M minus 4.5 against Auburn. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm going to go home field here. I think A&M wins this game at home. I think, like you said, both teams have momentum. So I'm going to take Texas A&M to cover.
All right, so there you go from Mike Griffith. He's on the side of the Aggies there on that. Jeff Sintel, how about for you with A&M here at home as a 4.5 point favorite?
So, Brendan, I think I'm so impressed with your knowledge of lines and what you research with betting trends that I thought you were going to have something here for the Liberty game last pick. But with this one, I'm thinking like Brandon here a little bit, and I'm going, man, that line's awfully suspicious. You see headlines about everybody should fade Auburn in this game. This is one of those landmine picks this week. This is a treacherous week, I think, with a lot of numbers and big numbers. I think Auburn, I'm going to take Auburn and the points here. I actually kind of think that this is going to be a close game. And the reason why I'm going as Auburn is I think Auburn's going to probably, be within that 3.5 point range, but not win. I think it's going to be a very close game. But I'm going to take Auburn and the points here.
All right. So Jeff goes the other way on the Auburn side of things here. Split decision. That means Connor gets a chance to break the tie.
Really want to pick Auburn here. Might regret this pick later on. But I'm going to pick Texas A&M. I think coming off a bye is going to help them. They're going to be healthy. They're going to be rested. And while, yes, Auburn did recently have its bye week as well, I think that's going to be enough. And as impressive as the Auburn win over Ole Miss was, Auburn does not have a talent advantage over Texas A&M. So because of that talent edge, and while I still have some concerns about Zach Calzada, give me Texas A&M here to cover the spread.
55% of our Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers, which is a fairly split decision, but 55% on the side of A&M here. They're going with the favorite. I'm going to go Texas A&M here there as well. One of the reasons what Connor mentions, it's just a deeper roster for the Aggies right now. Jimbo Fisher is quietly recruiting at a not Georgia, Alabama level, but if you define elite as still something below that, A&M has really been recruiting at an elite level as of late under Jimbo Fisher. And also fairly quietly, a narrative around the A&M program may start to change just a bit. You'll remember that A&M lost at home this season, Mississippi State, kind of reigniting this debate about how good of a home field advantage does Texas A&M have. This was discussed by the ESPN College Game Day guys in kind of a casual video and things like that. And there was a stretch of most of 2019, 2020 where the Aggies failed to cover in 4 of 6 tries in home games as a favorite. But as of late, that number has reversed itself. I mentioned the Mississippi State game, which is a counterexample here. But other than that, A&M's covered 3 of its last 4 at home, including winning outright as a big underdog against Alabama, obviously early this season. That's the noisiest instance and occurrence that I'm discussing here. But pretty quietly, A&M's starting to defend its turf at home a bit better than it has before. I also think that the immediate after effects of losing Hayes King to injury have been overcome by Texas A&M, and they are now playing a lot more consistently with the kind of football that I thought they'd be playing for the entirety of the season. I actually like A&M here a lot, minus the 4.5 points. I think that Auburn's been a pleasant surprise, at least for its own fans. I don't cheer for them, but pleasant surprise for its own fans. But at a certain point in time, that steam just kind of runs out, and I believe it runs out in College Station here this weekend. So I like A&M. That puts the flow narrowly on the side of the Aggies. Dar, you want to go with the flow then and take Texas A&M?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Aggies here just based on the data and all the trends and everything I'm looking at. It's kind of going against my gut, which is telling me to take Auburn. But, when you stack everything up, Texas A&M's had 2 weeks to kind of rest and get up for this, and Auburn's coming off their 4th straight top 25 opponent that they're playing. So I think those are kind of the deciding factors for me.
I mean, Dari, isn't it one of those things where, and it's been this way for years, and I think it's still true, that Auburn's just a different team at home compared to on the road. Now, they had the big win at LSU, but this is also kind of a weird LSU team too, that Auburn at home is just an entirely different animal than Auburn on the road.
Yeah, no doubt. They're a different team at home, much different.
So with that said, we'll turn our attention to our next game here, a Mississippi State Bulldog squad that found itself ranked in the college football playoff top 25 this week, and suddenly playing a pretty good brand of football. By the way, interesting to do a side-by-side comparison between Mike Leach at Mississippi State and the old boss, at Mississippi State, Dan Mullen there at Florida over the course of their last few games. Kind of interesting side-by-side comparison with what the rankings and the record for those two coaches has been. But nonetheless, it's tougher for the Bulldogs this week. They go on the road at Arkansas. Seems like it's been 1,000 years since Arkansas has played, but maybe that's just my own memory on that. Razorbacks favored, though, by 5 points here, hosting Mississippi State there on Saturday. So intriguing tilt in the SEC West. Also, maybe potentially a tricky pick there, too. Mike, what do you think about Arkansas 5-point favorite hosting Mississippi State?
Yeah, I could see this game going either way. Obviously, Mississippi State's playing good football. They were able to really handle Kentucky, did a better job against the Kentucky quarterback than Georgia's elite defense. I mean, Kentucky just came apart. Mark Stoops now 0-5 in Starkville. So I don't know, maybe they should bring some cowbells to Razorback Stadium or something, because Kentucky just awful at Starkville. Sam Pittman's had a week for his team to rest. This is the Sam Pittman pick. It's probably a homer pick. I like Sam Pittman. There's really no other reason to pick Arkansas. Mississippi State's got a lot of momentum. Arkansas got beat up pretty good early, but give me the Razorbacks at home to cover.
So Mike takes the Arkansas Razorbacks here. Jeff Sintel, your chance to make your own pick.
I guess I will call this my own pick as well. I'm going to go with Mississippi State on this one. The one thing you think about, well-rested Arkansas, that really gets me thinking, especially since they've been beaten up, probably playing one of the nation's toughest schedules so far. But another thing I look forward to is momentum in a college football season, and Mississippi State and Mike Leach certainly has that. I think, Mississippi State's quarterback is about to set all records in major college football for attempts during a season. Mike Leach is the Pirate, is the Wizard. And I'm going to take Mississippi State, kind of riding a lot of momentum, a lot of mojo right now. Give me the Hogs in this one.
So, wait, you just said, give me that pick one more time, because I think I'll have to heard two different things. Give me that pick again.
I'm picking Mississippi State. I see the number. They're getting 5 points. I'm picking Mississippi State.
Okay, there you go. Okay, very good. So a little split decision here, Connor. Your thought on Arkansas as a 5-point favorite?
This line's really confusing to me because schematically speaking, I think this Arkansas team isn't like it's just a bad matchup for them. This Mississippi State team is a really physical defense, and I don't think Arkansas is really going to be able to run the ball that well. And if you want to drop 8 and force Mississippi State to be patient, that's what this offense does to a team. So I'm curious as to why Arkansas is favored by 5 points here. I was lone wolfing it on Mississippi State a week ago. I see Jeff has joined me. I'd feel better if he didn't, given his atrocious picks record, but give me Mississippi State here, +5 on the road. I kind of like the money line as well, potentially to win outright.
68% of Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers on the side of Arkansas. They obviously usually go with Sam Pittman, as Mike Griffith also pointed out. I'm going to give you a number that I was not aware of, although it starts to make a little bit more sense given how they played as of late. That under Mike Leach, the Bulldogs are actually 5-3 against the spread away from Starkville. They played well away from home. In fact, they've covered in 4 of their last 5 road games. There's a part of me, though, that just thinks this luck is just kind of likely to run out. There's a little bit of a zigzag theory when you're talking about teams that are kind of lumped together, that you don't see the same result multiple weeks in a row. You've seen Arkansas kind of at its worst recently. Are they due to zig the other direction? And Mississippi State, who's been strong enough to be ranked in the college football playoff top 25, do they zag in the other direction? It's a contrarian play because the number here suggests that Mississippi State's going to be strong away from home, but I don't fully buy this. I've also been wrong about Mississippi State more often than I've been right, at least this year, although I pegged it accurately a year ago. But I'm going to sell high on the Bulldogs here, take Arkansas minus the points, and hope that the folks at BetUS and the other betting houses know something that I don't. So, Dari, the number screams Mississippi State, but my hunch says go against the data. I'll take Arkansas minus the points. That puts the flow on the side of the Hogs as well. You want to go with the flow and take the Razorbacks.
Suey, baby. Yeah, I'm going to take Arkansas here at home. They're a different team at home as well. You know, they get it up at home. Sam Pittman has them. They play different physicality at home. They have the extra week or 2 weeks or whatever it's been that they've rested Mississippi State may have that hangover coming off a big win, and I don't think Arkansas is going to turn the ball over 4 times like Kentucky did. I think Arkansas's defense is going to shine better than Mississippi State's defense in this game. I like Arkansas to win the game. I'm hopeful they can win more than the 5.
All right, so there you go on that. Good pick there from Dari Perry. We'll now turn our attention to what used to be one of the marquee games in the SEC, if not the marquee game in the entire league. Doesn't feel that way anymore. CBS passing the chance to televise it. It's lost a lot of its luster. It's LSU going to Alabama, with Alabama as a 28.5-point favorite. We know the story with LSU. Ed Orgeron coaching as a lame duck. In fact, was very critical of his team this week for what he felt like was predictability on both sides of the ball. So he's not holding back his disgust right now for the situation that he finds himself in. And I think we are also still trying to figure out what Alabama is, even after a week off. They were close with Tennessee for a while 2 weeks ago, although pulling away late and trying to make folks forget about the loss to Texas A&M earlier this season. Clearly, they're right where they need to be as far as the college ball playoff conversation goes, but they also seem to be a far cry from the strength that they displayed in winning the national championship in 2020. But a chance to take a step in that direction here this week by a blowout against LSU. Mike, do they get that at least to the tune of more than 28.5 points? What do you think?
Yeah, I really wanted to go with LSU. The way this line is climbing, Vegas will really take a bath if Alabama covers. But, LSU just looks hopeless to me. They look lost. I think there's a leadership vacuum. Alabama struggled with Tennessee, but I think Tennessee's playing good football. I'm going to take Alabama to cover reluctantly. I just have a feeling that they're going to be that much better than LSU at home.
So that is Mike Griffith on the side of Alabama minus the big number. Jeff Sintel, how about you? Minus 28.5.
I think Alabama and big numbers go together as well as a sentence right now as the Atlanta Braves and your 2021 world champions. Give me Alabama here, lay the points. I think they covered this mighty 28.5.
Well, folks, forgetting the last time we saw LSU, they were beating Florida outright at home. But nonetheless, Connor Riley, what do you think about LSU and Alabama here?
I remember correctly, the last time we saw LSU, they lost to Ole Miss by 2 touchdowns.
Wait, the Florida game wasn't the last game they played?
No, I'm pretty sure they played Ole Miss.
Okay. All right. At this point in time, listen, all these games, I'm just lucky if I can remember who's even playing this week at a certain point.
Yeah, Ed Orgeron made a comment 2 weeks ago that they didn't have enough players to practice during the bye week. I think this team has checked out. I think this team is done. I've already spent too much time on this pick. Give me Alabama here minus the points. I think this Alabama team is going to start to tune up for the SEC championship game, knowing that they've got to be playing their best ball against Georgia that day.
88% of Dog Nation daily listeners and viewers agree. They're on the side of Alabama here. You've heard me say before that there's like a Goldilocks zone that I like for Alabama. Don't love them when they're only a narrow favorite. Don't love them when they're a huge favorite. I like them in that kind of 2 to 3 touchdown zone. The truth is, though, as of late, they've actually played better at home as a much bigger favorite than at times I've given them credit for. No problem covering 45 against Southern Miss. Failed to cover the 54 against Mercer, but that's also 54. Go back to last year, 63-3 against Kentucky, 41-0 against Mississippi State. They've actually covered in 5 of their last 6 instances as a home favorite of 28 or more points. I think the quit factor is high with LSU. In fact, I think there's actually probably still a decent level of motivation on Alabama's part because they still remember 2019. They hadn't forgotten that one yet. So sometimes 28.5 seems like a lot. In this particular instance, doesn't seem like quite so much to me. I will take Alabama minus the big number here. If I'm betting my own money, I'm probably not actually putting any money on this game. But if we're doing this for a contest just for fun, I think Alabama, it's either Alabama or nothing in this particular case. So I'll take Alabama minus the 28.5. That puts the flow on the side of the Crimson Tide as well. Dari, do you want to go with the flow? I assume I know your answer.
Yeah. Bama rolls on. I'm taking Bama. I think LSU may start the game, 7-7 or something like that. But it's gonna be a long day for them. Bama's just gonna continue to stack points. It's a big number, but I think they're gonna cover. I think LSU's kind of given up.
So there is that. Our next game, rivalry game in the SEC East, and a team that absolutely just stung me a week ago. This is a Kentucky team that suddenly can't figure out what to do offensively. Will Levis, the quarterback, really struggling last week at Mississippi State, but they do come back to Commonwealth Stadium there at Kroger Field. They host Tennessee, and this time they do so as 1 point home favorites after being about a 1.5 home underdog. I should say road favorite. We picked the game a week ago, although the line I think shifted right before kickoff. The point is Tennessee, Kentucky, Wildcats giving one here at home. Mike Griffith, what do you think about Kentucky, Tennessee?
Yeah, the Kentucky defense is pretty good. They limited Georgia to 14 points in Sanford Stadium in the first half a couple of weeks ago, even with Georgia with that good run game and Stetson's ability to scramble. But, Tennessee's coming off a bye week, and I've just got to think something went really bad wrong for Kentucky, for their offense to come apart like that against Mississippi State. With all due respect to Mississippi State, I don't know where that's coming from. You talked about momentum earlier. I'm going to have to go with Tennessee. I feel like they have momentum, and I'm going to take Tennessee to get the straight out upset in the game.
Yeah, Levis right now just is not. He's not living up to the promise that kind of was had for him before the season began. I think you're right about that, or at least your evaluation of Kentucky. I'll make my own pick in a moment, but your evaluation of Kentucky, I think, spot on right there. Jeff, how about you? Kentucky minus a point.
Yeah, the one thing I kept noticing about Kentucky when they had their early run and early surge is I never thought they had the players or they'd recruited well enough over the last 2 or 3 years to kind of sustain some of those dark horse 10-2, 9-3 type picks there for this team. I like Tennessee to win this game. I think they will win this game outright. So obviously I've got Tennessee on this one.
Connor, skinny little point is what Kentucky sees itself favored by over Tennessee. What do you think?
Tennessee by like a rather comfortable margin, I think, in this game. I think they're going to be, they've shown that they're able to move the ball and score on just about anybody this season. Maybe Kentucky's able to pull it close late, but if you watch the Kentucky-Mississippi State game a week ago, that team just laid down to end the game there. And I don't think Tennessee is the same physical football team that I think Mississippi State is, but give me Tennessee here. I think this Kentucky team is pretty well broken, which, you look at what happened to Clemson, you look what happened to Arkansas after they played Georgia. Maybe that's just speaks to how good this defense really is, that it shows that it can just break offenses that seem to be doing fine otherwise.
So, Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they're on the side of Tennessee, maybe a little bit of a look ahead of the game coming up against Georgia. Not much, though. 58% do like the Vols here, plus the point. Obviously, that's essentially a pick them straight up pick. I feel a little bit like this game that I did on the Ole Miss Liberty game a little earlier. I don't have a lot on this other than the fact that I really got exposed last week because I felt good about Kentucky going into the game against Mississippi State. And, unfortunately, they just didn't stand up there in that role. But I'm starting to wonder, is the same thing true with Tennessee here? And for instance, I liked A&M, the first year magic of Brian Harsin, thinking that kind of fizzles out a little bit. Josh Heupel's had some first year magic of his own, hasn't always worked out to the tune of wins, but he's been praised for his work there with Tennessee here this season. There's a little bit of a look ahead to a home game against Georgia. Did they perhaps not give the Wildcats their full attention here? I also just have been of the belief that most of the season, Kentucky's just been the better team between the two. So I'm going to change my mind slowly on this. I'm going to give Kentucky another chance, believe it or not. I'll take them minus the point at home, but the flow is on the side of Tennessee. Dar, you want to go with the flow and take the ball?
No, I'm going to take Kentucky. I'm going to be with you on this one.
Okay.
I think it'll be a good game. Both teams going to want to run the ball pretty heavy. And I think, Kentucky's going to win the game as long as they don't turn the ball over. That's kind of been their issue throughout the year. When they don't turn the ball over a lot or none, they win. If they turn the ball over multiple times, they're probably going to lose the game.
So interesting evaluation there from Dari Payro. One more SEC game to get to, then we'll turn our attention back to Georgia, Missouri with our expected point total before all of that. It's Florida trying to avoid a fifth loss of the season. And Dan Mullen just biding his time before the recruiting time of the year begins in just a little bit. But they go to South Carolina as 18-point favorites. Honestly, I hadn't watched a South Carolina game in about a month. I'm not even sure what they're even bringing to the table there at this point. But nonetheless, it can't be that good because they're 18-point home underdogs to a 4-loss Florida team. So Mike Griffith, South Carolina, Florida, Gamecocks getting 18 at Willie B.
Yeah, it's amazing. You think back that South Carolina was able to hit 4 passes over 35 yards on Georgia Josh Van really burning Keely Ringo in that game, and Zeb Nolan with the longest completion of the season. I'm going to go with Florida in a bounce back game. I just feel like Florida is a good football team that had a bad 2.5-minute stretch. I mean, they're 3-0 with Georgia with 2.5 minutes left in the first half. I mean, that was not an illusion. And second half, Georgia outscored them 10-7. I feel like Mullen's shutting down the media, circling the wagons. I'm going to take Florida on the road to cover. One of your zig when they zag moves their BA, to steal some of your terminology there. I'm going to zig when a lot of people are ready to zag on the Gators.
Mike, you can make case that Florida's the best 4-loss team in the country.
I think that's fair. 4 losses, 4-4. They're headed for another 8-4 campaign, just as I predicted at the start of the season.
What do you think, Jeff? The number is 18.
Maybe we could also make a case that Florida is the worst 4-win team in the country. I don't know. That having been said, man, these 19 points, 18.5 points to me look bigger than any of these stacked lines in the Georgia game, the Alabama game, other games. I think Florida's going to deal with these points. I like Florida. I'm going to minus the points here. I'm going to go with the Gators in Columbia. Dan Mullen, we know the records tell us that Dan Mullen is an offensive genius. And I think more of the genius kind of spills out on the battlefield in Columbia this week.
So a lot of love for the Gators minus the points thus far. Connor Raleigh, what do you think?
I wonder about the quit factor with this Florida team. You know, you saw them just completely not show up last year in the bowl game against Oklahoma there. The team is pretty clearly down and out with the way the last couple of weeks have gone, losing to LSU the last time BA saw them play, and then losing to Florida there as well. I think you wonder about that, and because I'm even wondering about that, and I know Florida's circling the wagons, I'll take South Carolina coming off a bye here, plus the 18 points. I don't feel great about it, but if you wonder about the quit factor with this team, you have to wonder about what you're going to see on Saturday, because that 18 points is just a little too high for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably right. Dog Nation Daily listeners and viewers agree there as well. 82% like South Carolina plus the points here on Saturday. Of course, Georgia fans just don't like Florida, so that's what that is a lot. But if you look at, this is Dan Mullen's 4th year at Florida, and the 3 previous years, in 2 of those 3 years, Florida has not really played very well after the Georgia game. Go back to 2018 for a moment, where they lost 36-17 to Georgia there that day. Following game, lost to Missouri. Game after that, closer than the experts would have thought against South Carolina. They won, but only 35-31. In 2019, they really had no problem in those games after the Georgia game. But in 2020, even after a win, remember, they couldn't enjoy their own success very long, because they ended up having the embarrassing loss at home as a 3-touchdown favorite against LSU. That whether it's quit factor or just loss of focus, Florida post Georgia in 2 of Mullen's 3 years has not really been great in those final November games down the stretch. Although certainly 2019 is the counterexample to all of that. So perhaps this is just for fun, but I think there's a way to win and certainly not cover the 18-point number here. So I'll take a little bit of a flyer on South Carolina plus the 18. Gamecock's really not been great at home thus far this season, but nonetheless, I'll take them plus the 18 and have some fun with that. Dari, you want to, I guess, go with the flow and take the South Carolina Gamecocks?
Yeah, I do. I'm with you all. I'm gonna tell you that's a big number for a home dog, and I think Florida's kind of reeling a bit. So I'm gonna take those points.
So there you go. I think that's kind of a fun thing to see. And boy, wouldn't it be nice to see Florida squirming. And by the way, the good thing about Williams-Brice Stadium is, this sounds like a backhanded compliment, but I mean it in complimentary sense. South Carolina fans cheer for their team regardless of what the record is. They find a way to make that atmosphere feel like something, even when they don't have a whole lot else going on. So you let that game start slow for Florida, all of a sudden those Gamecocks fans are going to start believing a little bit. And, frankly, they'll make that a tough place to play regardless of the Gamecocks record. With that said, let's turn our attention now back to Georgia and Missouri for the final time here today. And our final pick for the week, the over-under set at 58.5, higher than it's been for Georgia the last couple of weeks. When the spread's 38, you got to find some place for those points to be scored. So 58.5 is where we're going on this. Mike Griffith, what do you think about that total?
Man, it's so big, and I've been such a sucker for thinking this offense would be better. Again, I do think JT is going to play some, and I don't think he's going in there just to hand off. I don't know that Kirby has a whole lot of love for Eli Drinkwitz. And Missouri just looks like a disaster of a program right now. I'm going to be a sucker again. I keep thinking that Kirby's going to let these guys play offense in the fourth quarter, but he never does. I mean, he leaves his defensive starters in there, but he puts the brakes on his offense. But I'm going to be a sucker. I'm going to take the over again. Sooner or later, Kirby's got to let these guys play offense in the fourth quarter and have some fun.
So Mike goes over on that. Jeff Santel, what do you think?
I'm going over. I think some of those wide receiver pieces might be back this week for Georgia. I think Georgia needs to test those guys out and see how those are functioning. I think, the thing about Bazelak being out kind of worries me that, Missouri can't really marginalize any type of offense whatsoever, but you got to get the feeling that this is, probably a 48-10 type game without a stretch of the imagination. I'm going to go over on this one.
That would be under though, 48-10, just so you know.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm going to stretch my imagination, Dory, out to another 3 or 4 points, and that makes me think we'll get over 58.5.
So there is that. Connor Riley, 2 overs thus far. What do you think?
I'm going to play the most dangerous game. I'm going to take Georgia to cover the spread, but I'm going to go under on the point total here. That's worked for me before this season a couple of times. I'm going to ride that formula again here. Give me the under.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's become a pretty popular, thing for Georgia all the way around. I mean, they've covered in 4 of their last 5 games, but the last 4 Georgia games have gone under. So we had a stretch there for a while last year where a streak of just under, Georgia was under every single week. And what's always amazing with the over-under streaks is that they're going to adjust the number down each and every time. And Georgia was still going under no matter what. And it takes 2 to tango here. It's not just, a stifle Georgia offense is doing that. It's also what they're doing defensively that creates that there as well. But I think that we're back to Georgia being a rubber stamp under in all of this for me. That's certainly been the safer play as of late. I think that Georgia can easily cover the spread on Saturday and go under, although I do have Missouri plus the points. But it's not impossible for me to see Georgia win this game 40-0 or something along those lines. So, Dari, I'll go under, and I think it's an easy underdog. Nation Daily listeners and viewers, they agree. 81% like the under here in this spot there as well. Is it that easy for you? You want to go with the flow?
No, you guys talked me into going over last week. I knew that 3 out of 10 years, the only time it's gone over 50 points in the Georgia-Florida game. It hits in the 40s a lot, but it just doesn't get that big. You guys swayed me with your confidence, and by picking last, you guys influenced my pick on that. I was going to go under, and I went over.
Yeah, I never really thought about this. You're kind of like the house, Dar. You're kind of like the dealer in blackjack. It's like you get a chance to. If we bust, it's almost like you don't have to make any pick. I never really thought about that, but there's
you guys also swayed me, and that this affected. This is one of. I usually am pretty set on my picks. That one I did change in show against what all my analysts. So I'm not going to do that here. I love the over in this game just because Missouri's defense is atrocious. Georgia's offense, like Jeff said, the wide receivers getting healthy. I think you're going to see some Arian Smith. I think if they do let JT come in, I think he is going to sling it and push it downfield when he gets opportunities. Missouri is just so bad, and this number is going to get there. If you look at it, I think all the games have gone over for Missouri this year except the one. They haven't covered, and all but one game has gone over because their defense is so bad.
Good stat. Good number all the way around. So fun week of picks coming up. Can't wait to see how it all plays out. Georgia minus the big number, and the rest of the SEC scuffling there as well. And I should say that Texas A&M Auburn game I think is a lot of fun on Saturday, and that could have sizable implications depending on how it plays out and how Auburn performs for the rest of the year there too. So a lot of fun across the board. Best of luck for everybody with your picks. First, don't forget RS Sander is the one to turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. Story after story, they've been delivering smiles. They can deliver one there for you there as well. Get your heating system ready to go. Get your water heater replaced. That's what's needed. Whatever you need, They're friendly folks, going to show up on time for the price that's promised. They're going to do the work that's promised. They're going to leave you feeling satisfied. That's the story they've been telling folks for a long time. And our audience can certainly attest to all of that. So check out RS Andrews online, rsandrews.com today. Big thanks to our friends at BetUS for providing the trend data. And I should say the spread data for today's show. Big thanks to BetUS there on that. And of course, we'll see you back here again next week at the same time for Go with the Flow, presented by RS Andrews. We'll look forward to talking to you then, everybody.